Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, we're going to talk about prompt engineering for Voiceflow, specifically for Voiceflow. Because prompt engineering in Voiceflow is very different than prompting normally. Because the point is you're interacting, differentiating the prompts. There are three types of prompts: system prompts, development prompts, user response prompts. Now, system prompts are literally like your base of the stuff, right? So prompts for setting personas, prompts for setting some base variables and something like that, right? Now, these prompts can be super complex sometimes and mostly should be kept simple with constraints, and we're going to talk about that. Second is development prompts, right? So these are prompts when you are using for development logic, right? So you want to maybe compare a couple of strings, maybe the user has responded with something and you want to process that input or something like that. And then you might want to use it for JSON formatting and a couple of other things. Then we come to user response prompts. Now these are super interesting because these are actually very important when you are building agents, because these are the prompts that make sure how you respond to the user, how is the conversation looks like, right? And all of those things. Analyzing the user feedback. So you might want to respond by taking some input, right? So for example, let's say someone has asked you for a detailed trip plan and then you have gone and replied back in some different format. Now what I'm going to do in this whole tutorial is we're going to work through all 6 different types of prompts. I'm going to write them with you and we're going to take a very simple use case, which is going to be a travel agent's use case, right? We're not going to build anything complex. We're just going to see how can we build a simple travel advisor who can help you plan a trip. Okay, so let's get started with that. Okay, first we are going to start by creating a persona for the travel agent. Now very simply I'm going to say go to logic and select the set variable option. Once I come to set variable, I'm going to select a variable called agent persona. I want to add an agent persona, and we are just going to say this is the value of persona, right? Anything, whatever you want to do, you can put that, right? Now again, in this specific place is actually where I'm going to input my whole logic of the agent, right? So when I'm saying like the logic of the agent, what does the base of my agent look like? So I'm going to say you are a travel agent who has experience in recommending people amazing vacations based on their preferences, right? Always respond in a positive tone and only respond questions, vacations. Now, let me just break for you. Okay, first of all, this is persona prompt. You're going to describe a persona. So I'm going to say you are a travel agent who has 20 years of experience. Let me just bring this back, and recommending people amazing vacations based on their preferences. We're going to do something super simple, and that's why the persona is super simple. Always respond in a positive tone and only respond questions related to travel and vacations. Now, in this place, you can also say humorous, right? You can say humor tone, or you can say like, respond in a fun tone, respond in a sad tone. If you are choosing something like that, you can change the tone about this, right? So I'm just going to say positive and fun tone, right? This sets the tone on how your agent is going to respond, and I'm going to show you where we actually use it, right? So first steps first, let's simply select talk and go to select AI and select on response AI, right? Now here I'm just going to connect this, select here and come back here and say respond with the plan to travel for 2 days to Delhi, India, right? And then I'm just going to come to prompt settings, and here you can simply select the persona. Now what does this help? And I'm going to show this to you very quickly, but very simply, always select the system part and input the agent persona. This gives your whole agent a base prompt to always work with, and always when you're using with something to respond with, you should always technically use this. Okay, so let's just click review, and again this will obviously ask for that, so I'm just going to click play here, so it has the value from there. And let me switch this off. And now if you see the response that's going to come, it's going to come in exactly the format. Now obviously, like, we cut it off, but fabulous choice. Delhi is a vibrant city of culture, perfect for a 2-day adventure and everything. Now again, look at this, just because of like a lot better. And I can show you the complete response also. I can just set this to like 500 tokens, which I do believe should be enough, right? And you'll see that it's just so much better just based on like, just simply saying this without a persona. And let me show you the comparison with this, right? So by setting up a simple step, we have just got such a beautiful response. And let me just do this, okay? Let me go ahead, remove this persona, and then technically just play this, because there is no variable required there. and you will start seeing like the response will not be that great. You will see how the response comes out to be very different than something with the system prompt. And that's what the beauty of like persona prompting is, right? So again, very specifically, if you look at it, here's a 2-day travel itinerary, super blank, right? There is no expression, there is no input, there is no interesting stuff. And again, like, very specifically, breakfast, start your day, XYZ, whatever. Like, it just seems like an itinerary rather than an agent, right? When you are looking for building Voiceflow agents, you're building a persona of an agent, right? So that's step one. And once you have done that, it's perfectly great. Just go ahead and put that agent persona. And this literally can help you improve your agents from day one by just setting up a persona and keeping that. And the best thing is why to use a set variable rather than going ahead and inputting persona every time, because in case you want to change something in the persona or the way the agent responds, you don't have to go ahead and change it everywhere else in the agent. You can just change it in one variable and voila, your life is sorted. Okay, perfect. Let's come to the second one, which is prompts for setting variables. Right now, prompts for setting variables, this is very interesting when I talk about it, right? So let's take a listen option and capture a response. Right now, let's take this. I'm going to disconnect this part, and this is one of like my favorites option to use because you actually start seeing how this. So capture, we are just going to select to entire user reply. I just want to capture a user input, and I want to say like, it's very simply, please import your travel requirements. Right now, once someone, right now again, when expect the users to actually input always correctly. Users, whoever is going to use it, they have to just go ahead and select here, and I'm going to just like want whatever the user is going to say. Use another option, and you're going to use AI and select set AI, and this is where the set variables part comes in. What I'm going to do is city name, and you'll see in a second why does that happen. For example, and based on the user input, and I'm going to give this an high variable. Based on the user input, please extract the city name. Right now, again, I don't write please, but very simply extract the city name and reply strictly with the city name only. Right now, very simply, we are going to create a city name variable, and we already have that, and we are going to keep it there. Now again, if you see here, you technically don't need to have a system prompt here unless you're using something specific, but I can just say you always setting a variable. We are trying to literally just set a variable here. This is not something that you will be using unless you are responding to the user. So when I do this, what I can do is I can plug this here and respond to user with a 2 days plan for city name in India. Right now, again, I'm always saying 2 days, and I'll tell you why exactly. Right, so let's say I come back here, and I simply come here and ask it like, please input your travel requirements. I want to travel to New Delhi. Right, let's just say I say them from this and give me an itinerary based on that. Right now, this helps me so much more, because the point is, if I see here, it simply took Delhi from the input and did that. I can do this again for any city, right? Because we already did Delhi. Let's try, like, people use other names for city, right? So for example, and again, I'm going to take super simple examples here, but let's say based on the user input, extract the city name and reply strictly with this city name only, right? In case I want to say understand which city the user is referring to, and extract the city name and do that. And I'll show you how this all, if I say I want to visit to Sin City. Right now, Sin City is famously dubbed for Las Vegas, right? And I've removed from a response for Las Vegas. And there you have it, right? Just because you have a set variable option, it automatically created a Las Vegas itinerary. It did not have to understand if I just input city name, will the AI be able to respond or not respond? Because you're using a set variable with the prompt and giving it an information on how to extract the detail from the user input, it helps you a lot, right? So that's literally the best thing that you can do when you're setting up variables. Rather than just taking the user response and setting it to the next prompt, always take a step more, set a variable to extract information and take it to the next step. Perfect. Let's come to now logic building, right? Now, logic building is something super interesting when you're doing a bit more advanced development or some kind of formatting or that, right? So let's say we want to now based input, we want to do some kind of a logic, right? We want to build a logic. So let's select, again, I'm just going to take set AI. Again, this is probably one of our favorite prompt, and we are going to do logic building, right? And after the AI has responded, the next thing I want to ask it, what is your actual budget, right? So I'm just going to take the message options here, your budget. Right now, again, I will say set budget. Because the point is, when you're asking people for a budget, if you're not giving them a number-based option, they might say like, I have a low budget, I have a mid budget, or they might even say like, I want to spend 10,000, but what, $10,000, rupees, or whatever. So we need to understand all of those things, right? So I'm going to say this one, what their budget is for the following travel destination, and we're going to put city name with the itinerary you mentioned. And we're going to put the VF memory, so it also has the itinerary of that, and we can obviously again go ahead and set this itinerary to something else. I'm just going to keep it there and come back here, right? Again, and this again, what I tell you is like Claude 3.5 Haiku works really great for just setting variables up. It's really good even for JSON formatting. So when you're using that, that's something that you should definitely use. Now, what's your budget? And we're going to just simply take a talk message or like listen, capture again. I can just duplicate this rather than creating a new thing. Take this, put this here, again, remove this, put this here, and then delete this. Save entire reply to last trends, come back to here, set budget, based on the understand what their budget is for the following travel, the itinerary, and I'm going to say budget, and we are going to create a new variable, budget red, right, with the, and strictly with an amount in the local currency where the user is visiting. Right, so now very simply, you can see there are multiple things happening here. First, we are going to ask based on what is the budget for the following travel destination with the itinerary you mentioned, right? And strictly amount in the local currency when the user is visiting. So for example, if when a city name and an itinerary, and then we are asking them for a budget, if they say 10,000, that means like technically for Las Vegas, $10,000, right? Or something like that. Always reply with a number with a local currency. So now you have set up the system prompt also, and you'll see how it works. And it might not work exactly how you want. It might work exactly what you want, and we'll tweak it a bit if required. Come to AI again. Come back here. Select response AI. Come to AI model. Select a prompt. Ask user for a confirmation on their budget for the following city. Now again, you can technically write this in like a message also, instead of you can just like in case, because you just use this. So we'll just put the city name and voila. And I'm always again going to put the agent persona here. So you have the agent persona and set that up. Perfect. Now here, obviously, whenever I'm responding, I always tend to choose 4.0 because it's just much better compared to Haiku in response, right? So again, you have to choose your models really well. So let's get started. Let's try to use this in a simple format, right? So first steps first, ask where do you want to, so I want to travel to, let's say, Sin City, right? Again, let's try the same thing, because also that's very interesting how prompts come to. But again, you can start seeing how we are building everything with different kind of prompts, different styles, how we are tweaking it around, and you can use the same thing. Okay, so perfect. It gives me your itinerary. What's your budget? I'll just say 15,000, and let's see, does it come actually with $15,000 back? Now again, $15,000 is probably too much for like a 2-day trip, but very simply, let's see what it comes to, right? So again, our Las Vegas, you're in front with a budget of $1,500, right? It did not come out as 15,000, and that's pretty interesting, right? And that's where we can see budget $1,500 breaks down approximately $500 2 nights and XYZ. Okay, so I input 15,000, right? Yep. Understand their budget. Okay, perfect. It is responding again. I think there is and that's where you have to always test your prompt. So set budget, and it's already based on understand what the budget is for the foreign. Yep, I think I messed up here because there is no set budget option. I'm not even input the budget, just a stupid mistake. And I'm just seeing the prompt based on the understand what their budget is for the following travel, right? But the point is, we have already asked for their budget and we have not input that. Okay, so because we were capturing this information. Now, if you see the problem here, it's very simple, right? Based on the user, like again, we are just selecting based on the user response of either an amount or a range or something, or a range, right? And let's just keep that. So again, very specifically, we are going to change this prompt to this, and destination is this with item mentioned, and strictly reply with an amount in the local currency where the user is visiting. And that's it. Ask a user for confirmation with their budget mentioned here and everything. So again, we are in their local currency. And because we are already asking for confirmation later, so let's just get started again. And I want to say, perfect. So awesome. Now I input 10,000, right? And finally replied with 10,000. Again, like, with the 10,000, would you like to work with? I'll make sure to craft an unforgettable vehicles getaway that can hit the jackpot and all of those things. Again, just because it's using the prompts, and again, we can also, like, you see, I don't like emojis a lot, right? I can go ahead and say simply, like, your travel agent, also positive and fun tone, and say without any emojis, and use markdown if required. And we'll see how this also works across next. But the idea is that, again, very simply, in the budget, doing always, like, just stick to the basics. Mention, like, like, this is what the user response actually means. That's something that we missed in the first prompt, and we are good to go, right? So again, let's go to the next step, which is like JSON formatting. Now, this is something that you might not use if you are not building agents, or, like, building complex agents and stuff, but I'm just going to show it to you very quickly. Now, one thing that I want to do is very specifically take all of this information and take set AI. Again, love this option, set JSON, and I'm going to come back here and simply say, take the user response about their budget and city name and the itinerary mentioned, and we're just going to define an itinerary which is already present in the memory. So I'm just going to put here and respond in the following JSON format. Right, and this is where it gets super simple. Very simply, in the JSON format, I'm going to say city name, and this is like the format that you're defining, so you don't need to worry about it. It should not be a variable, it should just be a format. City name, budget, and itinerary in one line, right? So I'm going to say, right, and one thing that I want to mention here is very simply, always set up a variable and say, very simply, I'm going to create a new variable, JSON, like, travel JSON, right? One thing you have to remember whenever you're doing this, please go ahead and say strictly respond with a JSON, don't add anything else. And one thing you might not use ever, literally, you might not use if you're not building extensions or agents, but I'm pretty sure if you're serious with Voiceflow, you will come to that and you will have to use a JSON formatting process, right? So again, just to see this, how this works, I'm just going to select like, a option, and I'm going to put simply here, so we can just see how the response, they see, like, how the agent is coming in a decent format, right? A very simple one, right? So I'm just going to put since city 2 days, right? Let's see again. And one thing you can see is, like, like the stuff, that means like 500 tokens is not, we need to increase that, but for the testing purpose, I'm not going to do that. So what's your budget? I'm just going to put 1,000. Let's see what it comes up with, $1,000 rather than something else, right? And then finally, you can see, like, it should create a response and then also give us the JSON format, right? And you can see very simply Las Vegas budget, 2-day trip, exploring Las Vegas trip, and etc. And this is super cool because the point is now you have the JSON, which you can go ahead and send it to extensions or do something else, maybe process a JavaScript or something like that. And again, it's literally might not be something that you might use, but if you use it, remember me that, like, that I'm talking about. Now, user response prompts. Now, we have already done this, but I'm also going to show you how can we do this better, right? So prompt, we have already been responding with this, right? Respond with a plan to travel for 2 days to city. Now, this is not a great prompt, I'll be honest, okay? But this leaves a lot of information up to the AI. And when you're building agents, you want them to have some deterministic property. Like, very simply, it should be like a bit more structured, right? So respond with a plan to travel for 2 days for city name. Instead of this, I'm going to say, create a travel plan for the city. And I'm going to write city name here for the next 2 days. Again, you can also take this as a user input based on, like, instead of 2 days, it's 10 days or whatever. The prompt, right? We were very simply here and see the prompt. It's very simple to respond with a plan to travel for 2 days to city name, etc., etc. But here we have improved it. Create a travel plan for the city name for the next 2 days. So city name is going to be Las Vegas, Mumbai, Delhi, whatever, and respond to the user in the following format. And why am I putting a format? Because I wanted to respond in a specific way, right? Overview of the place, simple 2-day travel plan, include the amount of meals included in the travel, and mention 2 places for dinner every day, and use markdown to improve readability. Now I'll show you how this actually looks. I don't want to input the agent persona. Just to test it, I can actually start like, just copy this thing so we can just test it out. Come back here, click on preview, and come back here and put the agent persona and click on generate. And once you click generate, you can start seeing how the response will actually look in the chart. So you can start seeing like, just like, test. So you can see this is the written markdown travel plan for Mumbai. Mumbai is the city of dreams. Day 1, lunch, afternoon, evening, dinner, everything. It's pretty interesting, right? And again, we can increase the token so we can just get a proper full response, right? Now, let's test it out. But also this starts showing like, your agent will always respond in a certain format rather than always like, be depending on AI, and you get very different responses, which is not a great workflow. Because if you're working with users, if you're working with people, you always have to ensure that the response is somewhat deterministic in some format. So let's see. Again, this looks so much better, and the point is we can actually test it for multiple things, and it will always come up in the same logical format. So let's come back here again. Let's say London, right? And please input your travel requirements, and you'll start seeing again it will show up in the same markdown style format with all the details that it always mentioned. Like again, obviously the things will change because London and Mumbai, 2 different cities, but the formatting will be same, right? So again, you have the notes, you have obviously like, culture. The thing that I mentioned is for all the time, right? Again, this just gives you a more control on how your response should look like. Like again, because it's using markdown, you can also say like, maybe add the name of the city, maybe not. Again, how you want the markdown to be, you can. But this is how you respond with the user. You don't respond by just like, letting AI respond in this format. That's a horrible way to do. Always respond with the structure. Okay. Now again, prompts for getting and analyzing feedback from the user. I think we have already like taken that in the variable part, because that's how we want to like, technically take a response. But another way to utilize that is in a chain format. Now that option is very simply like, let's say you want to analyze the user and give them a response based on that, right? So again, I can just come back here, right, and remove this and select here, come back and say, based on the user conversation till now, create a tone in which the user is talking to you. Now, why you might want that? You might want to do like, change the conversation on how it is going in case the user is not satisfied with the resolution. Maybe you want to trigger something else, and you can do all of those things, right? So again, create a tone in which the user is talking to you, and let's say, you want to respond in that format, or you want to even instead of response, let's just take this whole thing and look at something more interesting for the feedback thing that I just mentioned, right? Based on the user, create a tone in which the user is talking to you. If the tone is unhappy, respond with 1. If the tone is happy, respond with 0, right? So let's say you are building a customer support agent, for example, right? And like, respond with 0 or 1. If you're building a customer support agent or something like that, you might want to use this because this is very interesting, right? And I'm going to select like an option called feedback, create a variable, select red, feedback. And again, same prompt settings and everything. And then you have temperature, max tokens and everything. Always respond in 0 or 1. Now, based on this user response, let's see how it goes, right? We'll see how the response actually comes, and we'll see it in the debug message. And in this, I'm going to actually be dissatisfied. I don't like the way you are talking. Okay, was it not connected? Yeah, perfect. It was connected, but I can't see messages, and you can see like, based on the debug message, it says 1, which is like, I don't have a great tone. Now, what I can do is, if I don't actually have a great tone, and let's say you are building something with a customer support agent, you can come here and set the condition if very simply, or I want to have like a business project, I want to select prompts, is a condition builder. I want to select a prompt, and I can simply say feedback prompt. If it is 0, like just do nothing, but if it is 1, I can say like, escalate to the supervisor. Now that could be something that you might want to do, because this is based on the logic that, based on the user feedback, how we are processing that. And it's super interesting when you want to mention here is something that they've recently launched is prompt, right? And I want to select here and come back and select prompt. Right now, what is prompts, right? This is like a more prompt building option so that you can do more stuff with prompting and everything else. Create a random option of cities, right? So I'm just going to say you are an expert in travel, right? And then I'm going to say from a user's perspective, I want to know top 10 travel places in India, right? Now let's say I run this prompt, right? And if I run this prompt, you can simply see there will be a response and a couple of other things, right? So you can see 10 travel options, multiple, it completed late, the tokens ran out and all of those things. But that's interesting. I don't want it in this format. I want it to be a bit more. So what I can do is I can come here, add a conversation history if I want to, or I can add a message pair, which is something that I like to use a lot. So in this message pair option, I simply say, I have got top 10 travel places in India. And then as a user, I can say respond only with the city's name, right? And let's see how the prompt response actually changes, and then I'll explain you how this 10 city outputs. Now the way this works is it's simply a chat prompt. Now you have a system prompt, which is you are an expert in travel agent. Then you have the user asking that I have top 10 travel places in India. Now the agent is kind of like the respond only with the city name. So how you can do this is you can use a chain of prompts and then work on something like this. It's simply on Voiceflow is this prompting thing. You can use it to do so much more. You can say maybe you want to do a deeper formatting of JSON. Maybe you want to extract information from JSON, and you can use that here. You also have settings here. You can change this to AI model. Again, for most of the reasons, I use either Claude 3.5 or Haiku or GPT-4o. And then again, you also can input variables. So if I come here and say top 10 travel places in city name, and I input that, and if I click on run, I have to enter a city name because I want to test, and I input, let's say, Las Vegas, and click on run. This can literally process the prompt, give me the top 10 travel places, and respond only with the city name. Now this is going to be interesting, obviously, because the city we are already talking about, top 10 travel places in the city. It got those details. Then I said, okay, I have got the top places in India, and it automatically understood that we are talking about Las Vegas because it's part of the same conversation history, and then responded with the top 10 places in Las Vegas, right? So it technically is like a chat. So imagine this as a small chat that you're having with ChatGPT. You could see that, when you're talking to an AI agent, you don't get the right response all the time. So you keep prompting this like that. This is just like prompting one after another. So you get the right response and then finally respond with that. Now, how do you use this step? Very simply. You can either use it as a prompt, but again, that's not super useful because you actually have to use the set AI. And then you can, come to logic and click on set, and you can select set a value or expression or a prompt. Value or expression is a simple one that we were already using. But if you want to do something more, set prompt, select the prompt, and then where do you want this to be actually selected to. Where this gets formatted, and then you can use it in any other format. Now again, that's everything that you need to know on writing prompts. This is literally the primer that you need to go ahead and build your own agents. Follow some great rules, set up the right prompts, store the right variables, and go ahead. And if you're watching till here, and if you like my videos, please guys, 95% of you don't subscribe. Please do subscribe to the channel. It will help me out a lot. And if any one of you need help, there's a link in the description, so you can go ahead and book a call with me if required. And I'll see you in the next one.